Hey everybody, reporting live from Annapolis, Maryland, Elba Hall. Welcome to Navy Football Air Force Weekend. Trying to get my radio voice on. Welcome everybody. This is Byron Marchant, Class of 78, President of Alumni Association. Glad to be here with you this afternoon and excited to be able to communicate with all of you there in the Mountain West region. Wish we could be there with you, but we're going to be here in spirit and do a lot of virtual celebration of an Air Force loss this weekend. I understand they're already making excuses out there in Colorado Springs, by the way. They say they don't know who's going to play the game. They don't know who's going to be around to play the game. So it should be an interesting weekend of Navy Air Force. But more importantly, it's great to continue the tradition, and I'm very proud to see Navy playing Air Force during a COVID pandemic. So want to thank those of you who are here today. Soup, thank you as always for joining us. Chet, good to see you as well. Thanks for joining us. Always good. I know some of them are going to be out in Colorado Springs this weekend, so good to have them here. I want to thank the staff and Kristen and company. We're trying to get our act together since we can't see you physically to up our production game, and so we've gone from just a moving cell phone with jittery video to one where I've got to stand in the right camera angle, but we're getting there. I mean, by the end of the season, we should have this down pat. But I want to thank you again for my staff and all the virtual connections we made. Guy Higgins, thank you for being our Colorado chapter president. I see you there. Thanks for signing in. Thanks for your support. Go Navy out there in the Mountain West and hold the fort down best you can. I think if they'd invite you in the stadium this weekend, I'm pretty sure we'd win the game. But since they're keeping you off the grounds, I'm sure you'll figure out a way to make it work out there.
Yep.
I also want to thank John McPherson, the parents of Hayden McPherson, the class of the Parents Club, class of 24, for being part of our group today. Thank you to the Parents Club out there. Distinguished graduate Steve Reineman from the class of 70 is out in the Mountain West. Mike Byram of 74, Lance Benham of 72, Speedy Gonzalez, my friend, class of 71, Ernie Blake, 64, and James DeFranci, a great loyal Navy alumni, class of 63. I want to thank you guys for your continued support out there. I know Chet, when we're out there physically, sees you all the time. When we come to Colorado Springs, I know you come this way to Annapolis for our Navy games, so we want to thank you for holding the fort out there in the Mountain West. In fact, Soup, the last time we were out in Colorado Springs, Speedy Gonzalez and a few others, Ernie Blake and DeFranci, sponsored us at a great lunch and a dinner out there, and we didn't quite win the game out there, but we won the tailgate. So I know Chet will reverse that this week. We always beat Air Force here in Annapolis. Chet will talk about this weekend out there in Colorado Springs. I do want to provide a brief update to those of you who are on the line. Those of you who are not, we'll be putting this on our social media site so that you can forward it to all of your regional alumni out there. But just a few updates to let you know where we are. Soup's going to do the same. Chet will do the same. And this will be on our social media sites after today. So if people out there couldn't make this time frame, Mountain West time, feel free to share it with them on social media when we're done. Next slide, quick. So good old Malcolm Perry. I'm sure Chet loves this picture. I certainly love looking at it. And that's a good picture of him outrunning Air Force and getting another touchdown back here in Annapolis when we beat them in a pretty good game, as it turned out. Very competitive game, as they always are. But Malcolm was obviously the secret weapon last year. I'll let Chet talk about the game this year. I believe that's Coach Calhoun in the dusty background looking at Malcolm's score. You can see him looking pretty concerned with his headpiece on. Too late to call the play at this point because Malcolm's on his way to a touchdown. But great to return to this tradition. Great to see that picture of our last win over Air Force in Annapolis. Next slide. Just to update you that things continue to go on during COVID-19. I'm proud to work with the Soup and Chet to keep the ball going here. We're going to celebrate our 175th birthday of the Naval Academy here on October 10th. And I'm really proud to be with Chet and the Soup at this time when a lot of people are hunkered down still and can't really run their campuses the way they want to. The amount of discipline that it takes to run a campus or an athletic program or our alumni association during COVID-19 is frankly unprecedented since like 1918. And to do it and keep things going physically takes an inordinate amount of work. So I want to thank them and congratulate the Soup and Chet on keeping this tradition going. They didn't have people show up for High Day by dialing in on a virtual site like this. They didn't let the parents just stay home and bring the kids only. They let the families come to Annapolis over a several-day period, COVID safe, to get plea summer started. So congratulations to both the Soup and Chet on getting that done. As part of that, we were part of the team, and we had numerous parents sign up for our Alumni Association. In fact, this year, I think we had more parents sign up for our Alumni Association after we saw them over a 4-day period than any other I-Day we've had. So ironically, in a time of a pandemic, our membership grows stronger than ever before, and that's because we could actually engage with them during I-Day. You see the Commandant there providing remarks at the baseball field, and it was just a great celebration of a tradition that has continued despite the pandemic. So congratulations to the Yard, our association, and NAAA on great teamwork to keep the ball going during a challenging time. The plea photo program was outstanding. I see Elizabeth Beaton-Bender on here with her parents' clubs all around the country. I want to thank Elizabeth and all those who've kept the plea photo program going during a pandemic. Thank the Yard for the access. Again, because of all the energy we put into this during a pandemic, record number of parents have signed up for our Alumni Association. Next slide. In terms of our COVID status, you probably wouldn't be surprised. No reunions this fall in Annapolis. No celebration of a campaign close this fall in Annapolis. No distinguished graduate ceremony rescheduled for this fall in Annapolis. Everything's pushed off till next spring. So whatever was scheduled for this fall, except the reunions, are pushed off till next spring, late April, with the Yard. Hopefully public access for those events by then with the brigade will allow us to close the campaign and do distinguished graduate awards. But again, we're doing what we can virtually during a time back here in Annapolis, hosting virtual lunches like this, and working with Chet and the Soup to do whatever we can at the stadium when there's a home game to bring it to you with some other social media enterprise that we've developed to bring B-roll, so to speak, from the stadium during these pandemic times. So all of that is what we're doing. Our staff will continue to work virtually. We're not traveling this fall. We are trying to do what we can in Annapolis to host people, but for the most part, we're going to be on lockdown the way we've been since March, serving certain events here in Annapolis periodically from time to time this fall, but largely working virtually through December. Next slide. We have done a lot in a virtual world, so I always want to update alumni around the country as to what we are doing. Creative staff work, Kristen and her team, Elizabeth and her team, Craig and his IT team, John Rutter, who I see on here. John, good to see you, and his foundation team, doing a lot of great virtual work with you and others around the country. And there's a lot of engagement. We've done probably more engagement virtually than we can do physically, and gain more audiences virtually than we would gain physically. So ironically enough, because everyone understands these restraints, there are a lot of people showing up for our virtual events. I want to compliment the staff on a lot of this, but you can see a lot of what's been going on, virtual town halls all this summer with alumni, donors, and parents, I-Day weekend, football weekends. We're going to do these lunches virtually before away games, and Service Academy Career Conference coming up has been done virtually. Compliments to Craig and the IT team for great virtual conferences. More people showing up to those than they would in person because they can do it virtually. The Alumni Business Directory continues to flourish. Alumni Mentoring Program has over 4,000 participants, sponsored by the class of '69. Kristen and her team have developed some new virtual series, Know the Ropes, C-Suite virtual series with John Rutter. These are all virtual series we've launched to keep people connected back here in Annapolis, to keep you up to date. The Chapel Dome project, if you've already bought a piece of it, going really well, over $1.2 million in sales. Net proceeds go to the Soup and his Soup's fund to help him during the pandemic. So it's a great cause, and these are great items to have for historical purposes. The Soup was one of our first participants in this, and $1.2 million later, we're doing really well. Alumni membership continues to grow strongly. This is one of our best years ever. 2,300 new members, and mostly parents as part of that. So very proud to have that record during a pandemic, and we can all be proud as alumni that people continue to lean in. Shared interest groups and their membership is growing. They're helping grow our membership as well, and they're doing a lot of great dialogue with mentoring future leaders, both women and minorities around the country. I also want to compliment Craig and the IT team. We're providing IT support to 10 chapters at this point, around the country for membership purposes and 106 chapters, classes, and clubs for purposes of website support. I'm very proud of the team for what they've done to support our chapters, clubs, and parents around the country. Next slide. I'll let Chet talk about the football schedule. It is challenging. I see schools canceling games week to week. COVID is challenging. I see the NFL shifting games week to week. It's definitely a challenging time, but this is a great schedule, and I'm sure Chet wants to definitely hold on to it as all the ADs do. I'm very proud to see Chet with this schedule during a time like this, and certainly we know the challenges to make it work. So I'll let Chet speak to that. Our next home game is October 10th with Temple. That's actually also Naval Academy Founders Day. So Kristen and I, Chet, and the Soup will do extra production work to celebrate the Naval Academy's 175th birthday at the Temple game in Annapolis that day. Next slide. Again, 175th anniversary this fall. That's a big deal. We would have celebrated, absent the pandemic, with thousands of people back here at the Naval Academy in October to celebrate this birthday and the Naval Academy campaign that we're in right now. But because of COVID, we're pushing off that celebration to another time physically, but we are going to celebrate it virtually, and hopefully you'll celebrate it in your areas in the Mountain West around the country the same day while we're watching Navy beat Temple. Great stuff coming up, and more to follow on what will come out over the next week or so in that regard. Next slide. Campaign so far, if you've been involved in our Naval Academy campaign, we're going to be almost at $500 million by the middle of October. And by the end of this fiscal year, we should be well over $500 million. That's a great record for our alumni. It's great for the Naval Academy. If you've missed it, the Naval Academy is ranked #1 public, liberal arts college at #6 overall, liberal arts college. Meanwhile, Chet maintains a top 20 football team. Very rarely do the two go hand in hand. One usually doesn't allow for the other. So if you got top 20 football teams, very rarely are you in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 in the country in academic rankings. The fact that we're both is amazing. And I would point to the margin of excellence and the campaign and what we do to support the Naval Academy is really enabling those rankings. And I'm sure the Soup and Chet would agree that your support as alumni are just as important in our ability to be ranked #1 in the country as the support from the government. So we can be proud of that as alumni. It's a good news story. Celebrate it and share it as we work through the pandemic to finish up the campaign. Next slide. We do have an initiative to support the Midshipman Activities Fund. That's coming up shortly. We're going to use an online tool to do that. The Soup is challenged along with the Yard because they've had to shut it down to the public. In fact, so is Chet. So there's no public revenue, no ticketed customers. And as a result, the revenues have shifted that would support other activities, including the Midshipman Activities Fund. So we're going to step in and help the Soup try to fund these activities in lieu of what he otherwise would get because the Yard is shut down publicly. And so we're going to engage in a series of fundraisers for the Midshipman Activities Fund. This is one that's coming up, 30-day initiative. John Rutter is going to help lead that and the foundation team through Give Campus Online. Again, the mids are an extraordinary time where they're largely on the Yard 99% of the time with limited liberty. So whatever we can do to make the Yard more amenable, while they're essentially on restriction, for lack of a better term, plus or minus their weekend liberty, we should be helpful. And so we will. We've raised a lot of good money for the Midshipman Activities Fund through the Chapel Dome Project. But I'd encourage every alumni listening to this to step up with whatever dollars you can raise or support, particularly parents, to help support the midshipmen during a time like this on the Yard. Next slide. Alumni Center update. We're building a brand new Alumni Center. Should open in 2022. It'll be state-of-the-art. We're #1 public in the country. Our facilities date back to the early 1900s. I'm in the basement of Ogle Hall as we speak. When we build this new center, the center will match our ranking in the country. And also match the ranking we have as a top athletic program. Our alumni should also be representative of that kind of quality and ranking. This building will be completed in 2022. There's a lot of good class fundraising opportunities available. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get involved in this project. There shouldn't be another building like this for another century. So we're very proud to be part of this effort at this time in our 134-year history, and I'd encourage you to learn more about it from John Rutter and others who are helping us raise funds for this project through 2021. Next slide. And these are the rankings. Again, I'm going to turn it over to the Soup, but You can be proud of these rankings as alumni. I say to people all the time, bad news travels in a nanosecond. I've experienced that here numerous times. Good news travels like worse than snail mail. So let's get this good news out. We're #1 in the country. Let's see if we can pass this around as quickly as other things are passed around. #6 in liberal arts colleges and #5 in undergraduate engineering programs. That's a heck of a record for a school that continues just to do what it does as a leadership institution for the country. So kudos to the Soup and Chet and all the alumni that have made this possible. Next slide. This is a special committee of the Alumni Board. Sam Loeffler and I have announced this committee to work on issues of diversity and inclusion at our Alumni Association. We met with them yesterday with an interim report. There'll be more recommendations coming out. There'll actually be an alumni survey coming out soon on these issues that involve the work of this committee with recommendations to be considered. And all alumni will get to opine upon how they feel about these issues and what the association can do to get better. We can all be better on these issues of our history. We've been making a lot of progress. I'm very proud to be here as the alumni president. I've seen the progress, but there's always more improvement that can be done. That's true of athletics, it's true of academics, and it's true of these issues. I also think they're mission critical to get right for unit cohesion, athletic cohesion, and great leadership. At the end of the day, the country expects us to be better than what we see on TV. Shouldn't be tribal about it. We should get together, work to improve as an alumni at large, and make sure we're leading on the issues and not following. So more to follow on that, but very proud of the work of this committee. And there'll be a survey coming out to alumni to allow them to participate in this effort in the next couple of weeks. Next slide. And that's the update from Annapolis. So I don't want to take up too much more time. There's time for questions at the end. The most important people here today are the Soup and Chet. And we'll save questions to the end, and feel free to ask those questions when we're all done. So Soup, over to you. 63rd Superintendent Vice Admiral Sean Buck.
Thanks, Byron. I greatly appreciate it. And let me just say thanks publicly to you and the entire team, both at the Alumni Association and at the Foundation. We greatly appreciate all the continued support to allow us to keep running like you told everybody that we were running. We're proud of it, but it comes with a lot of effort and love and support, and that comes from a lot of people dialed in right now. Greetings from Larson Hall on the Annapolis side, also with just across the street and down the hall from Byron. On the other side of Ogle Hall, where Byron is right now, is St. John's College, as you all will remember. And I just think a fun fact to share with you all today is there are currently 371 midshipmen living on a day-to-day basis on the St. John's campus as part of our mitigation to be able to bring the entire brigade back to Annapolis for the fall term. So an update to you, the brigade is reformed, finally. We took 2 months to reform the brigade from the 27th of July to about 3 days ago, the 27th of September. We went through a very laborious but safe process to test each and every midshipman as they return for COVID, to quarantine them all for 2 weeks, and then to test them coming out of quarantine before we release them to their respective activities in their permanent rooms in Bancroft Hall. We had to set aside about 130 rooms in Bancroft Hall for a quarantine and an isolation space to be prepared to mitigate against any large outbreak of COVID. At the height of the worst that we had COVID here, we were using about 85 of those 130 rooms. Now we're down to using 2 of those rooms. But that's why I needed to expand lodging capacity over at St. John's. And I think you'd agree with me, that's a story for the ages. The cooperation between St. John's and Annapolis and a military school will be talked about for the next 100 years until the next pandemic when something like that has to happen. But I'm very grateful for St. John's, and I will tell you the cooperation between our 2 schools over the last 10 years has been really strong. Good neighbors, and we're helping each other out. The midshipmen are back on the yard learning They're learning in a hybrid nature of delivery of course material. I say hybrid. I would suggest about 50 or 60% of them are in the classroom on a day-to-day basis and an hour-by-hour basis. Professors are in the classroom, and professors are also presenting themselves distant learning-wise on the computer if they happen to have comorbidities themselves or live with anybody that might be at risk of COVID. So real proud of the academic side that we figured out a way to get to yes. We figured out a way to teach the kids in person as much as possible and continue to develop leaders in person, not online. And I think you all have heard me say that before. I can grant them or confer them an educational degree, but you can't develop leaders for the future online. You need them here in person to get hands-on experiential leadership opportunities. And that predominantly is conducted through leading themselves, leading the brigade in the hall and all around the yard. We're doing sentinel suppression COVID testing. And I know that's a mouthful, but the bottom line is with the midshipmen either living 2 persons to a room, 3 persons to a room, 4 persons to a room, just as you all remember when you were here, in a very communal environment, both living and eating and recreating and going to school. The sentinel suppression testing method was what was recommended by the CDC and also by the pandemic math team out at the Air Force Academy. We've been at it for 8 weeks, and we have extremely low COVID positivity rates at the Academy. By that I mean over the last 8 weeks, 0.7, 0.2, 0.6, 0.4, 0.5, and the last 2 weeks it looks like 0 positivity rate at the Academy. For the last 5 weeks, the mids have been going out in town. We were able to begin to finally grant them liberty on Saturdays and Sundays. And those that are on the superintendent's list and are 3 stripers and above, they have liberty during the week on Wednesdays. With that, and with fairly low positivity rate out in the local community, and by everybody complying with the basic health standards of wearing a mask, washing their hands, social distancing, not going to large events like concerts or in bars or inside dining, knock on wood, we're doing very, very well here at the Naval Academy. And Chet Gladchuck knows this, and he's awaiting a phone call that I'm about to make. With that good news story on COVID, I'm petitioning the governor of Maryland and petitioning the county commissioner of Anne Arundel County to revisit their rules that currently constrain us and allow me to take the Brigade of Midshipmen over to the stadium for their football game and possibly be able to have some number of fans in the stadium also. So keep your fingers crossed. That's for the Temple game on the 10th, but I will tell you where we're focused now, and it's to beat the hell out of Air Force Saturday afternoon out in Colorado Springs. For the parents group, Mr. Higgins, thank you for continuing to be the president of the Mountain West chapter out there. For the McPhersons, I think Mr. and Mrs. I heard from the class of 24, thanks for your leadership with the parents group. Tomorrow afternoon, my wife Joanne and I are jumping on a jet, and we will come out and join you in Colorado Springs. We land around dinner time, and you will definitely see me and hear me in that Air Force football stadium. I just want to go on record here right now. They think that Sean and Joanne are going to stay in some skybox, quiet behind the glass and not being able to be seen or heard. But all of you all, if you tune in to CBS television, you will see me doing a lot of push-ups as Navy scores a lot of touchdowns against Air Force. Now, you may see me arrested by the Air Force Police and removed from the stadium, and wherever they take me and lock me up, I'll continue to cheer for the midshipmen until the gun sounds and we've got a victory. But thank you again for all your support. Go Navy, beat Air Force. Over to you, Chet.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, got our hands full with Admiral Buck. I'll tell you, trying to keep him under control. But it's a great task to have, because his energy and his enthusiasm and his daring attitude, I tell you, is an inspiration to the midshipmen. When they see him at the game and as invested as he is, it takes everyone up to another level. So thanks again, Admiral, for being a part of that and leading the charge. You may be in the midst of an entire group of Air Force cadets, but to hell with them, right, Sue? I mean, whatever it takes, we're ready to go. Simple as that. Well, look, thanks for the opportunity just to spend a few minutes here. And, you know, typical of the news report, now comes the sports report at the tail end of the paper. First and most importantly, let me thank you, because there's a number that Byron had mentioned that are really close to what we try to accomplish in the NAAA and with our physical mission. You've done a magnificent job, and I won't mention the names, but you know who I'm referring to because you're on this call, and your support has helped us truly achieve the levels of success that we've enjoyed as a program, both operationally and in terms of our facilities. You'll be very pleased. Again, some on this call have made commitments to our physical mission center. You'll be very pleased with how that came out. I think it's a wonderful statement that brings together all the qualities and all of the attributes, the values that are imbued in the physical mission. It's a statement that we make through that facility. And again, when we get around to dedicating it, which we've postponed it now a couple of times because of COVID, we'll all be together to celebrate in a way that is very meaningful and appreciative. Second, we're all extremely proud over the fact that, again, the Naval Academy was ranked as one of the top public liberal arts colleges in the country. Number one, as Byron mentioned a moment ago. And, you know, we're doing our part because obviously we're trying to win games. We're trying to get out there and represent the Academy and the Navy and the Marines with our blue and gold carrying the banner. But and we also know what our primary mission is, and that is to graduate and commission officers. So along with the fact that, you know, we're the number one public liberal arts college or university in the country, and we've had a tremendous result with regard to our graduation rates for student athletes in particular. I know the brigade at large is extremely impressive, but the NCAA came back with the most recent calculated graduation rates for the Naval Academy, and our most recent rate is 96%, which is one of the top graduation rates in the country for student athletes. So we're doing our part both on the court, so to speak, field of competition, and off the court, field of competition, and in the classroom, and making certain that we're preparing these young men and young women as the whole person that they need to be to serve effectively as leaders, and they take the next step in their careers. The fall season was a tough one, no question. You know, we dropped everything in March because of COVID. I can't give you any solutions today because no one has the solutions. We're just trying to manage it, even to this day, 6 months later. We lost a really good run in the spring with some good teams, some outstanding athletes that were firsties that would have achieved All-American status. We had some coaches that would have been coaches of the year. We clearly were leading in the Army-Navy N-Star Series, and we would have won. You know, this is calculated statement. We would have won the Patriot League President's Cup again, you know, for the 8th time in the last 9 years. But so be it. Point I'm only making is that we were on track because of your generosity and your margin of excellence support for another great year. We got through the summer months. We put together a game plan. The superintendent was terrific in providing his guidance and leadership and developing that road ahead. You know as well as I do, he just mentioned how successful the COVID process has been in terms of addressing it, testing it, protocols, etc. Well, the same holds true for athletics. You know, proud to say that we're testing our athletes on a regular basis, of course, especially football, because they're involved with their competitions. And, we're in the same boat. Very, very, very good news. As a matter of fact, going into Air Force, as was the case going into BYU, as was the case going into Tulane, I mean, no positives at all. So we're staying where we're supposed to be, doing what we're supposed to do. And even though there are some institutions across the country that are fighting this battle and actually canceling games, we're in a position here because I think of the infrastructure of the academy. It's helped us so much so in meeting the requirements of the AAC and the other programs that we compete against. Schedule Byron mentioned is daunting. It certainly is competitive. And there are some teams within the AAC that aren't quite as diligent as we've been in the medical protocol arena. They've had to cancel games. Houston's having a heck of a time. Florida had some difficult times as well, as has Texas. But we expect to play, each weekend. We are tested 3 times prior to the contest, a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday just before the game, testing, and then we're tested on Monday to make certain we come out of it clean as well. So we'll see how it unfolds, but as it plays out today, Air Force has been tested. We're all set to go. Obviously, we're set to roll on Saturday, and the word looking ahead is that Temple is in the same boat. They're clean, and at least we see the next 2 games, in the queue. Army Navy is always a question that comes up. The fan base. Soup mentioned he's going to appeal and try to open the aperture here a little bit with regard to our fan base. It's been really difficult because Navy football is all about pageantry, the spirit, the emotion that comes from the brigade and our fans. And playing in an empty stadium, a couple of times here against BYU and there down in New Orleans against Tulane has been a different experience, kind of like the Twilight Zone. But nevertheless, if we can get some bodies in there to be a part of the action, it'll change the dynamics a bit, and it'll help us financially too. Because you can imagine, you've heard me speak many times over the years in terms of the importance of revenue generation and keeping the NAAA, where it needs to be to sustain the 32 varsity sports. So football carries itself, but the other 32 need the help. And getting the fans and allowing the Army-Navy game to proceed, et cetera, is really important. Worst case, again, is we'll carry the rest of the season, including Army-Navy, forward, without fans. But the expectation is, at a minimum for Army-Navy, we should have the brigade and the Corps cadets in attendance. At least that's what we're planning on today. Speaking about the case at hand, which is the weekend, it's a big one. It always is. We don't normally have a great showing out in Colorado Springs. When Air Force comes to Annapolis, things seem to go our way. And out there, if you look at the records, it's always a challenge, when you come into that stadium. Soup hasn't seen it yet, but he'll see it on Saturday. It's interesting, and many of you have not as well, where the buses are parked and you come down the ramp, and I don't remember it, verbatim, but if you get this big sign about, you'll be sucking wind shortly, there's no oxygen, they got a big skull with crossbones, and if you have a heart condition, go home. So what they do is they try to intimidate right out of the blocks and make you think about the altitude. And normally it won't affect us, we're in or we're out, but again, psyche is part of the game plan as well. But we talk about it and we'll be ready to play regardless of the altitude and regardless of the oxygen. This is the 52nd time we're going to play these guys out there, the Falcons, back and forth. To put it in context, and the reason, as is because Air Force only became Air Force as an academy a relatively short time ago. In comparison with Army-Navy, we're going into our 121st matchup. So 52 is not a lot of games in the sphere of football history. But again, we've come out of it in pretty good shape. We've won that Commander-in-Chief trophy on a fairly regular basis. We've got the trophy today. It's been sitting in our locker room all week. So before anyone goes out to practice, they tap that goat on the trophy, and it reminds them of what's at stake, coming into this particular weekend. Air Force is on a roll. Again, they're a little disjointed because they're not certain in terms of, their future earlier in this fall. This is going to be their first game, as you know. Their lineup is still a little skewed. We're not sure exactly who's going to show up. We do know only 11 are going to play at the same time, so that works in our favor. But after that, we'll see, because, again, many of them went home, and they did this. They've got a program there that allows them to take a semester off if there are some conditions that warrant it, and they did do that. So there'll be some number in total, but nevertheless, we expect it to be a really competitive game, as it always is. Interesting stat is that in the last 23 matchups, Army, Navy, Air Force for the Commander-in-Chief trophy, the winner of the Navy Air Force game, 21 of the 23 times captured the Commander-in-Chief trophy in that respective year. So usually whoever comes away with this game on Saturday, you'll have the inside edge, based on history anyways, to make it work. I feel pretty good about where we are. BYU was tough, no question. We weren't ready to play. Tulane, it took us a half to get there. Second half of Tulane, we came back. One of the greatest comeback in the history of Navy football, and came back to beat them. And many of you watched that game. But I feel that's where we are today. We're geared up. 2 weeks of preparation. We've hit. We're seasoned. We're toughened up. And we're very, very anxious for this nationally televised game. Again, there'll just be the core of cadets out there. There will be no fans, but nevertheless, our guys are used to it at this stage, and you can expect a really good matchup. I think our offense will move the ball on them. If there's a weakness, they've lost most of their people on defense. Our defense with Brian Newberry, I think, will be really tough, and but their offensive people, most of them are back. So it's going to be a bit of a, an interesting outcome to see how these two factors, weigh in. A better offense, I think, for Navy, probably a little bit, tough offense for Air Force as well. But regardless, you got to strap it on, and you have to play the game. And, of course, we'll do that. So excited about it. We'll miss seeing you. We'll miss our usual get-together as we normally do out there with a couple of drinks and a wonderful meal, and the camaraderie that comes with our trip to Colorado Springs. But, again, we appreciate you being on today, and expect to win. That's all I can say. I'm expecting, coming off of Tulane that second half, that we're wired up and ready to play Navy football. So thanks for being a part of it today, and go Navy, beat the Falcons.
All right. Well, thanks, Chet, and thank you, Sue. Appreciate it all. And Chet, since we're recording this, and I don't want anybody to think we've lost the spirit, I always ask you to lead a 1, 2, 3, go Navy, beat Air Force, or beat the Falcons cheer. But before we do that, are there any questions? Were there any questions for Chet or the Soup?
We did, sir. We had a question for a question for both. And this question came from Keith Waldrop out of the class of 1964. Question for Chet. Will arrangements be made to enable brigade cheers and crowd noise to be piped into speakers near the Navy bench during the game?
Well, it's an Air Force home game, so I'm not sure what they're going to do at Air Force. But we did that against BYU, and it didn't do a damn thing. So we'll see how it goes. I'm still thinking about it. What we do at Navy is if things don't work and it works to our detriment, we usually don't do them twice. We'll see. But I can't speak for Air Force.
Thanks, sir. The second part was for the Soup. Will the brigade be able to watch the game on widescreen in Alumni Hall or Dog Run or elsewhere on the yard?
Keith, we have set up a screen system over by Ingram Field, the outdoor track where we host outdoor movies. It'll be telecast there, and then each of the midshipmen can also watch it in their company areas, their rooms, and a couple of other assembled areas for fairly small groups on the yard. Now, I'd also like to say that the cadets may have 4,400 of them, but they got one of me, and the Navy football team will have a lot of cheering.
I think you'll see some of the brigade on television. CBS most likely will go back and forth, showing some of the spirit on the yard. So, appreciate that setup that the soup's put into place. And, the electricity will be there on the bench. I know that.
Okay, is that it?
Any questions from Guy Higgins from Colorado or Chip Sherratt from our upper Midwest? Anything?
No, we're good here.
Okay. Chip, okay, everybody's good. All right, Chet, you want to lead us out of this lunch for posterity, and we'll put it on social media with a 1, 2, 3.
Gang, really appreciate again everything, and let's see if we can muster one up here. And I'm going to look to the Admiral. If the Admiral gives us the thumbs up, the superintendent is content with his cheer. If he's not happy, we're going to do it again. So let's give it one big roll here. Let it rip, and let's see how this virtual environment can handle this enthusiasm. You ready? On 3, go Navy, beat Air Force. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go Navy.
Beat Air Force.
All right, we're ready to go, Byron.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck, Chet. Good luck, Scoop. Have a good trip to Colorado Springs. Signing off.